So let's go ahead and get started with the March regionals. So welcome everyone to the March 2026 CalPADS Regional Update Meeting. The focus of the session today will be updates for the end of year or EOY submissions in CalPADS for the 25-26 academic year. My name is Matt Clark, and I'm a data governance administrator at CSIS, and I'll be hosting the March regionals today. And here to discuss some community agreements from the CalPADS office, I'll send it over to Diana.
Thank you, Matt. Good morning, everybody. Wanting to walk through some community agreements for this meeting today. First one, we keep students at the center and we work together to achieve our goals. We take space and make space. We include and respect all, and we're listening to understand. We participate, listen, and learn actively. We're tough on problems and easy on the people. Our meetings are respectful and judgment-free. All positions, voices, and ideas are valued, and we honor the agenda. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Diana. And we're getting questions in the chat here. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. All right. We will have presenters from CSIS as well as from the Education Data Management Division and Special Education Division at the CDE today. Our presenters will also be monitoring the Q&A to provide answers to your questions as we move through the slides. Presenting from CSIS today, we have Rima Mendez, Requirements Management Officer, and Heather Coda from Requirements Management. We also have Angela Ratty, our Client Services Architect, and myself, representing Client Services at CSIS. From the Education Data Management Division, we have Diana Casanova, Education Administrator at the CalPADS office, as well as Paula Mishima, Education Administrator, and we have Dominic Johnson, the IT Specialist in the Special Education Division. This slide shows our agenda for today's session. So we're going to begin by discussing the 25-26 CalPADS calendar, in particular as it's relevant to the end of year submissions. We'll then move into a discussion of special education updates before we begin discussing end of year general updates for the 25-26 academic year. We'll then move into end of year submission changes, new collections, and reminders before discussing CalPADS support updates and wrapping the session up with reminders and resources. So that is quite a bit of content to get through in the 2 hours that we have here today. So let's go ahead and move into the first topic for the March regionals with the 25-26 CalPADS calendar. And here we're going to look at the CalPADS calendar this academic year, specifically as is relevant to the end of year data collections. This slide shows the CalPADS reporting calendar for the new end of year 1 and the new end of year 2 submissions. Remember, in the 25-26 academic year, we have consolidated the former end of year 2, 3, and 4 into a new end of year 1 data collection. The former end of year 1 data collection has become end of year 2 and has been expanded to include one additional data set with graduates and completers. The two new end-of-year collections will importantly not have the same certification or final deadlines. Both the new end-of-year 1 and the new end-of-year 2 will open on May 5th, 2026. The new end-of-year 1 has an initial deadline of July 17th, followed by an amendment window and a final deadline of July 31st. The new end of year 2 has no amendment window and has only a single deadline of August 17th this academic year. The best practice for end of year 1 and end of year 2 is to work towards 0 fatal errors by the error-free milestone date. For the new end of year 1, the error-free milestone date will be June 26th, and for the new end of year 2, the error-free milestone will be August 3rd. The new end of year 1 is a consolidation of the former end of years 2 through 4. So that being the case, in the new end of year 1, we will collect data on student programs, incidents and absences, English learner services and reclassifications, homeless students, special education, and post-secondary status data for prior year completer students with disabilities. The new end of year 2 is the former end of year 1 plus grad and completer data. So in addition to grads and completers, we'll collect course completion, CTE, and work-based learning data. It's important to note that the new end of year 1 submission includes the new attendance recovery collection, which is submitted in the staff assignment or STAS file, and the new expanded learning program or ELP, which is submitted in the new LEA program or LEAP file. Additionally, for students with disabilities, LEAs will be certifying one-year graduates and dropouts for the time period of July 1st through June 30th. All right, and that does conclude the discussion of the CALPADS reporting calendar for the end of year submissions. Seeing no questions in chat there, I'll go ahead and send it over to Dominic to discuss special education updates in the end of year submissions.
Thank you, Matt. Good morning, everybody. First off, we have upcoming our spring roadshows. These are the locations and dates. I don't have registration information yet. That will be coming soon. When we have that information, as well as more content information, we'll publish that on the CDE website and send out a notification via the SPED data support listserv. I wanted to talk a little bit about monitoring report 1614 by District of Special Education Accountability, or DSA, to identify students that are enrolled with other LEAs for whom your LEA would be identified as the DSEA on the plan record. For end-of-year, LEAs can use this report to monitor the data that informs the annual determination letter and the federal indicators. This includes discipline data because we monitor suspension, expulsion, and restraint and seclusion rates for disproportionality in monitoring. LEAs should also monitor the statutory timelines to ensure meetings are being held and reported in a timely manner. Next slide, please. The next two slides are going to outline which federal indicators are informed by end-of-year data and which reports you can run in order to verify the accuracy of your data. It also shows whether the results are assigned to the District of Special Education Accountability or the reporting LEA, and when you can expect to see these data in your annual determination letter. So indicator 1, graduates, is certified at end of year. There are 2 new reports that will be launching with end of year. 1627, students with disabilities, completer and dropout counts, and 1628, completer and dropout student list. 1627 will be a certification report. These results are assigned to the DSEA and will appear in the February 2027 annual determination letter. Indicator 2 is also end of year and informed by the same reports. Indicator 4A and indicator 4B, suspension and expulsion overall, suspension and expulsion by race ethnicity, are informed by end of year and can be monitored using reports 7.12, 7.16, and 7.18. Indicator 8, parent involvement, is an ODS indicator. We use data as of the close of the amendment window. These data can be monitored in report 16.24, students with disabilities meetings student list. Indicator 11, the time frame between evaluation and identification, also known as child find, uses ODS data as of the close of the amendment window and can also be monitored on 16.24, meeting student list. These results are assigned to the reporting LEA, so a little bit different than the other indicators. Indicator 12, the C to B transition, where Part C students receiving infant services must have their plan or have been assessed by their 3rd birthday. This uses ODS data and can also be monitored in the 16.24 report. Indicator 13, transition in the IEP. These are the 8 transition indicator questions for students that are 16 years or older at the end of the year. This is collected at the end of the year, and LEAs can use certification report 16.14 to monitor their 16-year-old and above students and those plan indicator values. And finally, indicator 14, post-school outcomes, as collected in the end of year. This data can be reviewed using reports 17.3 and 17.4. 17.3 is a certification report, and these are also assigned to District of Special Education Accountability. Speaking of the new reports, we have scant information, but they are coming for the end of the year. 1627, students with disabilities, completers and dropout count, and 1628, completers and dropout student list. These reports will show students with disabilities' most recent exits between July 1st and June 30th of the selected academic year. Wanted to talk a little bit about private school enrollments and proportionate share. We do use CALPADS data, and we are empowering LEAs to use CALPADS data to calculate proportionate share. So last fall, the Special Education Division held the private school data and proportionate share webinar. Recording and materials are available at the links in the slide. The end of year data, LEAs can use CALPADS end of year data to calculate proportionate share funding, but this requires maintaining private school enrollments and exiting those enrollments in specific ways. Those counts, regardless of whether or not they're eligible and participating, are used, but there's not a specific report in CALPADS that LEAs certify for proportionate share. To summarize the key takeaways of the webinar, only the district of location should submit private school enrollments for students attending private schools within the LEA who are referred for evaluation or transferring from outside the district. The district of residence should never submit private school enrollments unless the private school is located within their district. Hence, they would be the district of location. Private school enrollments for students attending nonprofit private schools should not be exited with N470. They should be exited at the end of the year with E170, non-primary enrollment exit. Private school enrollments for students attending for-profit private schools should always be exited with N470 no-show, because students with disabilities attending for-profit private schools are not entitled to equitable services. Additionally, we have put together a private school work group and are discussing further guidance for reporting proportionate share counts. This concludes the special education regional updates. I would ask that the special education users remain on for another 10 or 15 minutes because we're going to be talking about CALPADS updates that are relevant to everybody. Before we begin that, let's take a look at the Q&A. Elise asks at 9:40, will there be a virtual roadshow? Yes, I believe so, sometime toward the end of May. Eugenie, the monitoring 16.14 by DSEA is available only to LEA level users, correct? At this time, yes, that's correct. Yvette, 9:45, are we still sending the students with disabilities status for graduates one day after the drop date reflected in the SIS? Yes, when you're changing a student's eligibility because they graduated with a diploma, for example, you would want to make that change in eligibility effective the day after their enrollment is exited. When the reports look at the student record and they look to see the date they were exited as a completer or a graduate, it's going to look at the status that's effective on that date. So we must ensure that the student is still eligible and participating on that date, and the status can be updated effective the day after. Anna, question 1 and a request. Can report 1614 be available as a SELPA monitoring report, please? I will take that back to the team and see if that is a possibility. And that concludes the Q&As. Thank you for the questions, and thank you to my colleagues for their additional support. I will now hand it over to Diana for the general updates.
Thanks, Dominic. All right, so shifting over to some general updates. Okay, so we're sharing info today about the new user authentication that we're implementing to CALPADS very soon. Starting next week, CALPADS will be transitioning to a new user authentication system. This change requires all CALPADS users to acquire a new username and password. As an update, we wrapped up user acceptance testing last Friday on February 27th, 2026. And another update, you can read more about the new user authentication in CALPADS Flash Update number 319. We'll also be sending out additional reminder emails during implementation, so look for those as well. So here's what this change entails. All users must acquire their new username and password during the transition window that opens on March 10th, 2026 and runs through May 1st, 2026. Users are encouraged to get their new username and password early in that transition window, and users that fail to do so will not be able to log into CALPADS after the transition window closes on May 1st, 2026. These users are going to have to work with their LEA CALPADS administrators to establish a new username and password. So a few more notes about new user authentication. Acquiring a new username and password should only take about 5 to 10 minutes, and stay tuned for a live demonstration toward the end of the meeting. LEA CalPads administrators will have access under user management during the transition window to manage account creation and track the status of users in obtaining their new username and password. Finally, CALPADS will be posting a training video to their training website, and this video will guide users through the process of doing this transition and getting your new username and password. And be sure to keep an eye out for additional communications from the CalPads team prior to the official rollout.
Yes, good morning, everyone. We just want to remind folks that end of year data discrepancies are now visible under the data discrepancy UI screen, and that's the image to the right where you can see those. So you would be able to see your new end of year 1 and end of year 2. And as a reminder, data discrepancies are errors that trigger on records already posted in CalPads, and they're not submission errors that reject batch files or online transactions, and they may be fatal or warnings. And basically, these data discrepancies identify potential discrepancies earlier rather than discovering them during certification. The goal is to reduce last-minute end-of-year surprises by spreading the data validation across the academic year. This approach supports proactive data quality and not just end-of-year data cleanup. In any unresolved fatal data discrepancies, they will become certification data discrepancies, also known as CDDs, listed on the certification details screen once the submission window opens. So for end of year submission window, that opens on February 5th. So any unresolved fatal data discrepancies will appear under the end of year certification details screen. And historically, many issues weren't visible until certification. So the DD/CDD helps surface those issues sooner. However, when it comes to end of year related data for data discrepancies, they fall into two broad categories. One category is early year checks. And so these are reasonability and consistency checks, such as CELA 0054 E1. This is English language acquisition start date that is less than the birth date. So this is something that you can monitor year round. And then also there's another one that Paula will talk to a little bit more, but this is Center 06757 E1. This is invalid TBD English language acquisition status code, which is a warning, and it's a reminder consistency check that for students with the English language acquisition status of TBD who has not been tested in 30 days are legally required to be tested within 30 days. So this particular DD is available year round. It's also one that's under Fall 1. So you can monitor these ones. And then some other ones are around age, grade, and data logic. One in particular is Center 0733 E1. This is invalid grade for student initial US enrollment date in K through 12. And then also another early year round check is required records existing when data is submitted. And one that comes to mind is SCSC 01393 E1. This is student course record must have a corresponding course section record. And as we get closer to end of year, these ones more rely on checks that rely on finalized data. And some of this is around course completion, CTE completion, work-based learning. And then also some of the ones near closer to end of year is enrollment exits, absences, and incident outcomes and course completion. And the ones that come to mind that you may see a lot of in the earlier year part of the year would be Center 07515 E1. And this is the student enrollment record in an active reporting academic year has not yet exited. And usually you don't submit this data until end of year. And similar to that one is the missing absence summary data for students. That's Center 0718 E1. Usually you don't see this data submitted until after towards the end of year. So these are ones that you might want to focus on, not during fall and more towards around May, June timeframe, even April.
Yeah, send it over to Angela to discuss the new split file functionality.
Good morning. Thank you. Yes, so starting on Tuesday, we'll have a new feature in CalPADS called Split File. We're not planning on demoing it here because it only impacts a very small number of users, and most of them participated in the user acceptance testing already. So most of you will not be using this feature. It's attempting to solve two problems that large LEAs have right now. If I like to use LA Unified as an extreme example, they try to submit their student course enrollment for the entire district. If you think about all the high schools that LA has, and every kid has X amount of classes, you can imagine that's a very large file. And if they attempt to upload that now, the system kind of seizes up and it doesn't let them. So LA has to go in and manually break that file up into different smaller chunks so that CalPADS can handle it. And even then, when those are so large files that they're able to upload, it takes CalPADS a really long time to process them. So if they opt to use this feature now, CalPADS will automatically break that file up, typically partitioned by school. So it's fixing the issue of them having to manually do that, but also the system is processing that data a lot faster. So those are the two things that are happening with this. We did finish user acceptance testing last week. It went pretty well, and typically they liked the course file in particular, because that's the one that typically gave people the most heartburn. Okay, so this is what it looks like. It's kind of small on your screen, but when you go to upload the file, you'll have an optional box to check. And if you do check it, it will break apart the file that you're splitting. And when you go to the view submission details, you'll have a separate tab to look at to see the list of schools that are impacted. We have some feedback that we got from user acceptance testers that we are taking into consideration to continue to enhance these features. The other thing that I wanted to mention about this is not all file types are currently supported. And in particular, I wanted to point out that the student information file right now is not supported for split file. And that's because the student information file does not have a school in it to break apart. Doesn't mean we're not going to get there. We just have not implemented that. Do we have any questions on split file?
We got, what do you consider a large district for using the split files?
Well, if you've ever had a problem where CalPADS rejected your file, seized up because it was too big, you're in that you're in that group. Or if you feel like, boy, this file is taking 3 hours to process, maybe next time I upload it, I will split it up.
Angela, is there a possible number for like students, like LEAs over like 10,000 or LEAs over like 15,000 or so?
Yeah, I don't have a threshold. And like I said, this is an optional feature. If you want to try it out, go for it. If you don't, that's fine too.
Thank you.
All right, so that was the question from Laura. We did get one more question from Christopher. Once a large file is split, will they succeed or fail together or individually?
Great question, Christopher. So it's kind of bringing back the partial post concept. So if some schools in the file are successful, they will post. And if there's one error in one school, that entire school is rejected. So some of the data will get in and some won't.
All right, and one last one just popped in. Is the split file functionality only available to certain schools or districts, or is it available to all users?
It is available to all users.
All right. Now it is time to send it over to Paula to discuss reminders regarding reclassifying English learners.
Thanks, Matt. Good morning, everyone. So as you know, annually, we send out a reminder flash regarding reclassifying kids basically during May. And so actually right now, we also send out an annual flash about reclassifying students during the summer. We are now writing a flash that consolidates those two things into one flash. And what I'm going to talk about today are just the reminders for reclassifying students during May. And just stepping back a minute, when we're talking about reclassifying students in May, it's really those students who can be reclassified based on the 24-25 summative LPAC and summative alternate LPAC. and where you're reclassifying them for the 25-26 year, but based on 24-25 results. Okay, so that's kind of like the focus. So the first reminder is to make sure that you consider any reclassifications of students based on the 24-25 scores, and that you should review those. Because if you can reclassify them, doing so will get them basically reclassified. And so if you do reclassify them, we're just reminding you to make sure you upload those scores into CalPADS, or those statuses into CalPADS by May 15th. And the reason for this is because we take, or CDE takes data from TOMS, not from CalPADS, and they takes the EL and RFEP statuses, as well as looks at what EL students have been assessed and who has not been assessed. And using that data, it comes up with what's called the participation rate. The participation rate is important because it is used in developing the English language, or the English learner progress indicator on the dashboard. And so you really want to make sure your data are basically in TOMS, not necessarily in Calc, but in TOMS, in order to have the best participation rate, okay? And as a reminder, data goes from CalPADS into TOMS, and so it takes a little while. So CDE recommends that if you decide to RFEP a student, you should do so, make that decision by May 15th. Then if they are RFEP, to make sure you upload that data into CalPADS so that it gets over to TOMS in time by basically May 31st, which is the date when all the data from TOMS is taken to determine the participation rate. And if you decide not to reclassify a student by May 15th, then you have to make sure you assess that EL student by May 31st, because the participation rate is based on basically your number of EL students who have been tested or not. If they've been reclassified, they don't fall into the rate because they're not EL anymore. So hopefully that provides you some context for why we talk about this every May. So again, this is just summarizes what I just said. Basically, update your RFEP status in CalPADS by May 15th, and this is just to make sure that those statuses are in TOMS, so they're not included in the participation rate. And if there are any EL students who you determine you're not going to reclassify based on those 24-25 results, then make sure that you do test them by May 31st, which is required by law. Okay, so the next chunk of students that with the flash will also talk about is reclassifying students during the summer, which are basically those students who you reclassify after May 31st. And so I won't go into that now. I'll talk about it in the May regional, but also that information will be in the flash that will be coming out hopefully this week or next. Okay, a third kind of reminder is, as discussed earlier by Rima, there is a really cool DD now that you can look at to make sure that you are testing all your ELASs of to be determined within the 30-day window. Okay, so you can use the DD screen as a way to remind yourself, hey, you know, these kids need to be tested. Okay, so the next 10 slides are on Sunbucks, but we've split all the information in littler pieces, so it's really not as much as it might sound. But the main thing to remember is that Sunbucks is a program that's administered by our Nutrition Services Division. We play a big role just in terms of collecting some of the data, but our NSD folks are our subject matter experts on this program. So any questions, especially around eligibility and so forth, should be directed to them. And they will be providing a webinar next week on Sunbucks for 2026, and we will be participating in that webinar also, but they're the ones that are leading it and will be providing all the programmatic information. Also, you might refer to Flash 321, which we just sent out a couple weeks ago, which talks about the data piece of Sunbucks. So, I just wanted to provide some context about Sunbucks. There's so much, it's so complicated and there's so much information, but really when it comes down to it, it's a big program where benefits are provided to a lot of students, but 83% of those students are found eligible based on data that's in the California Department of Social Services system called CalSAWS. So as you can see, about 3.5 million students are identified just because they're able to pull data out of their system, and those are the kids who are participating in CalFresh, CalWorks, or Medi-Cal. CDE does play an important role, and so do you guys, in getting those students who don't fall in that 83%. That's kind of like the 17%. Last year in 2025, Sunbucks, 718,367 students were identified based on the data that you all provide. Okay, next slide. For you to understand who are those 83%, those are all the students who are ages 6 to 18 who are enrolled in CALPADS who are directly certified by CALPADS. Those kids are not in the 17%. Okay, so in other words, even though we look at those DC students, if you look at them, you will know that they're going to get benefits, and you don't really have to worry about any DC kids because they're basically pulled directly out of CalSAWS, which is the authoritative source for that data. Okay, but note, before you go on, note that the age there, 16 to 18. Okay, that's because the federal law requires all students who are compulsory education age, they get benefits, even if they're not enrolled in a California public school. That's why they're all just pulled right out of CalSAWS, because they don't have to determine whether or not those kids are enrolled in a school participating in a federal meals program. Okay, but the kids who fall outside that date range, 0 to 5 or 19 to 22, they have to be enrolled in the school participating in a federal meals program. Okay, so that's why those kids get a little bit more complicated. So who are in the 17%? So there are kids who are eligible for CALPADS who aren't on CalFresh, CalWorks, or Medi-Cal. Usually they are, but sometimes they're not. So that's why we pull from CALPADS any kids who are homeless, migrant, or foster during the eligibility period. Okay. So again, usually those kids are also directly certified, but sometimes they're not. So we pull them from CALPADS to make sure we're capturing them. Also note that for you all, what this means is the most important records to get to CALPADS for Sunbucks purposes are the homeless records, because we are now telling you which kids are migrant and we're telling you who's foster, so you don't really have to do anything with those. So the main thing are your homeless kids, to make sure those program records are uploaded into CALPADS. So now students who are not directly certified or homeless or migrant or foster, but are income eligible based on an approved National School Lunch Program application or universal benefits application, those kids are also eligible, and that's where you guys right now are playing a big role, because you're having to collect those applications, approve them, do verification, and so forth. Okay, these kids are not, we're not pulling them from CALPADS, however, which is why you have to submit them to EDCS. And the reason we're not pulling them from CALPADS is because you all submit to us a 181 or 182 record, but we have no idea upon what basis those records are based. We don't know if it's based on a UBA, an SLP application, or an alt income form. And as you know, alt income forms don't qualify a student for Sunbucks. That's why we're collecting them separately through EDCS. At some point in the future, we'll figure out, if we're going to move it into CALPADS, but right now, we're just going to continue to collect them through EDCS. Of those 17%, there are students 0 to 5 and 19 to 22 who I talked to you about a little bit later, who are directly certified not by CALPADS, but by a local process. Okay, and the problem is we don't have those kids because they're not directly certified. Okay, that's why you all have to submit them to us through EDCS. If they're ages 6 to 18, however, they're probably they probably are coming out of CalSAWS. So that's why we are telling you guys just to submit any kids who are directly certified by a local process if they are 0 to 5 and 19 to 22. Otherwise, we're probably picking them up directly from CalSAWS. And just, this is another question we get a lot. Some LEAs don't know what a local process is, or they don't know what these records are. If you're a school district, and most school districts do not do this, if your school district does not do a local direct cert process, don't worry about this because you don't have any of these kids. Okay, now students who are 0 to 22, I'm sorry, Matt, with extended benefits are in the 17%. Now the problem with extended benefit kids, and these are kids whose one sibling in a household is on CalFresh, for example, but another sibling is not, that other sibling is actually eligible. Their benefits of their brother or sister is extended to them. So those kids are eligible. If your LEA has a process whereby they identify kids with extended benefits, you can submit them up to EDCS. Again, you can also submit them to CALPADS, their 18182 record, but we don't know that's why they are submitted to us. That's why you have to submit it separately to EDCS, because they're not pulled from CalSAWS, and also we can't tell in CALPADS who they are. Okay, so hopefully that gives you an idea who's in that 17% and why certain data are submitted to EDCS versus CALPADS. So how do LEAs submit the students in the 17%? This is a summary, basically by keeping CALPADS up to date with enrollments, homeless program records, and student addresses, okay? The kids who are pulled out of CalSAWS, their addresses are coming from CalSAWS, but all the other kids, their addresses are coming from CALPADS. So the easiest thing to remember is just try to keep student addresses up to date in CALPADS. And then by submitting one of the following records to EDCS, either the date an NSLP or UBA was approved, was submitted to the family, or the date a student was directly certified through a local process. And again, those are just focus on the kids who are 0 to 5 or 19 to 22 and had not been directly certified by CALPADS. You do not need to submit students who were directly certified by CALPADS because we already have them. And then finally, the date benefits are extended to the student by the LEA. Are data submitted the same way to EDCS? For the most part, yes, in that the file has not changed, but the way that we process the file has changed this year. So last year, as you may recall, we said it was a full replacement file. So that means we asked you to submit, every time you submit anything to CALPADS, to submit all the students. This year, we've changed that. So you only need to submit any new kids that you have not yet submitted to EDCS. Okay, so instead, the files will be appended to, not replacing what's in EDCS. If you feel more comfortable just submitting every kid every time, you can do that. It'll just look really funky in EDCS because you'll see a whole lot more records because each set of records are just being appended to what's in EDCS. But you may do that if that's easier for you to do. So the only negative to going to this way of you sending up the data is that if you do submit wrong data, you can't get rid of that wrong data by simply submitting up a new full file without that wrong data. So if you do submit wrong data, meaning students who are not eligible, it is really important that you notify us as soon as possible, okay? So you send an email or a ticket basically to the Education Data Collection at cde.ca.gov, email and let us know. Then we will work hard to kind of extract that. If you let us know before the end of the month, it's a little bit better because we can basically delete those files out of EDCS. If you tell us after the end of the month, then the data has already gone over to CDSS for card issuance. And then we have to do a lot more scurrying around with CD DESA to try to get those records pulled so a card is not issued. Okay. The main thing is make sure, check your files before submitting them to EDCS. That's the main thing. I know last year it was the first time doing this, so we understand, any new way of doing stuff gets confusing. And literally, mostly everyone did it correct, but once in a while an LEA would submit like the wrong file, like all the kids who were ineligible versus eligible, something like that. So just make sure before you push that button of submitting it up to EDCS that you've checked it and that it's all good. When does EDCS open for Sunbucks? Okay, EDCS will open on April 2nd. And what is different programmatically is how you are going to select what records you need to verify. Last year, as you may recall, it was a rolling verification where you verified a certain number of records each month. But what the feds actually require is for LEAs to take a sample, a 3% sample based on all records that have been submitted by families between July 1 and April 1st. Okay, so whoever you have as of April 1st with a UBA, you take 3% of those and you hold them back for verification. Okay, so note that when you're submitting records to us, you need to submit records from July 1, 2025, all the way to September 2nd, 2025. You have to resubmit those. You submitted them for 2025 Sunbucks, but you're going to have to resubmit them for 2026 Sunbucks. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is, even though you're submitting records from July 1, 2025 to April 1st, 2026, do not include the records from July 1, 2025 to September 2nd, 2025 for verification, because you basically already verified those last year. Okay, so just hold back for verification 3% of all approved UBAs that were submitted between September 3rd, 2025 and April 1st, 2026. So all of this is discussed in the flash. It'll be discussed next week. So if you're confused, refer to those documents, okay? And you can, obviously ask questions. Finally, note that EDCS closes earlier this year, September 30th. Last year, it closed at the end of December. So note this earlier close date. This makes us more in line what the federal regulations will require. So this means it's really important to process applications that get submitted at the close of that eligibility period, which is August 31st. So anything submitted in August, make sure you approve them and verify. You don't have to verify them, approve them as soon as possible, because they have to be uploaded to EDCS by September 30th at 5 p.m. I probably should have put this slide earlier, but basically we pull data from CALPADS and EDCS on the last business day of the month at 5 p.m. Okay, so hopefully that's easy to remember. For CALPADS, we actually start pulling data in February, okay, because those homeless records are already there and all who's migrant and foster and so forth. So we get that data over to CDSS earlier so that those cards can be issued. But we will continue to pull data from CALPADS all the way through September in case kids become migrant, homeless, or foster during basically the latter part of the school year and during the summer. For EDCS, we open that window on April 2nd. So the first pull from EDCS will be the last business day in April. And we'll do that pull at the last business day of each of the months, with September being the last. Okay, so the specific dates are outlined in Flash 321. So you can refer to that Flash for the actual days that we're going to take data out of EDCS. Okay, that's it for me.
No, it's all right. We did get some questions coming in. Are you able to field a few questions, Paula?
Sure. Are we getting...
And Paula, I'm going to step in really quick. I've also sent these questions over to Nutrition Services Division, so I can also type in an answer as we receive them from Angelique.
Okay. Is
Yeah.
that easier to do?
I think that might be easier. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, these are all the questions about the toddlers and the infants, and there is I do see Jamie Post has a question about I think it's in like participating school realm.
Yeah, this is Angelique should be able to answer this, but basically, remember, independent study schools, it really just depends if your school is participating in a federal meals program. Some actually are because they have kids come on the premises certain, number of days, but those who are completely virtual technically shouldn't be participating in a federal meals program, but Angelique could provide you details on that.
Yeah, so as I get the answers or responses, I will type those in and send them through the question and answer portion of the Zoom meeting. And also, these are great questions to bring to the Zoom webinar next week. So making a plug for that. QR code and the link is listed on the PowerPoint.
Let's go ahead and move now into the end of year submission changes, new collections, and reminders for the 25-26 academic year. And we are going to start by sending it over to Diana to discuss the new end of year 1 and end of year 2.
All right. Thank you, Matt. Okay, so as we discussed earlier today, when you saw the calendar in prior regional meetings and outlined in CalPADS Flash Update 312, we've consolidated and realigned the CalPADS end of year submission. So consolidating 4 end of year submissions into 2. And so this consolidation and realignment requires a bit of a brain reset, especially for folks that have experience with the prior end of year submissions. So let's dive into the details of this change, which are outlined on this slide. The final certification deadline for end of year 1 is July 31st, 2026. The end of year 1 submission includes what was previously collected in end of year 2, 3, and 4, minus 1 year graduates and completers. For students with disabilities, end of year 1 now includes a count of graduates and dropouts between the time range of July 1 through June 30th, and this is aligned to federal reporting requirements. End of year 1 will also include the new expanded learning program data submitted on the LEA program or LEAP file. All right, moving on to end of year 2. The final certification deadline is August 17th, 2026. The new end of year 2 submission will now include what was previously collected in end of year 1, as well as 1 year graduates and completers for all students graduating and completing between a time range of August 16th and August 15th. And the August 17th final certification deadline is the same date that these data will be pulled for the 4-year cohort. Okay, so on this slide, we want to add more details about the end of year 2 certification date and the date that we pulled data to calculate that adjusted cohort graduation rate, or the ACGR. So the graduate cutoff date for the ACGR is always August 15th. This never changes. So what that means is that students must have a graduate exit date by August 15th to be included as a graduate in the 25-26 academic year. The cohort pull of data for the ACGR will always be the same date as the new end of year 2 certification deadline, and it will always be 1 day or the next business day following the August 15th graduate cutoff date. So that is when August 15th falls on a Friday or a Saturday, the cohort pull will occur the following Monday. We're actually in this scenario for the 25-26 end of year 2 submission, so we all get to practice with this nuanced rule. So this certification deadline of end of year 2 and the ACGR pull date is going to be August 17th, 2026. So as a reminder, students that graduate after August 15th, 2026 will not be included as graduates in that 4-year ACGR for the 25-26 academic year. These students will, however, be counted as 5th-year graduates in the 26-27 academic year. Okay, sending it over to Paula.
Hi, this is just a reminder slide about attendance recovery that there's lots of information now posted about this new program. Changes to the student absence summary file have been made. So once you start submitting that, you'll see basically a new column that shows you your number of AR days that you're reporting for a student. certification report has been updated, as I just said, and there is a real-time report that you can look at any time, but that's forthcoming. And that will include same new column displaying attendance recovery days. So again, this is a reminder, we've had a lot of discussion about the expanded learning program. Again, refer to Flash 305 for more information about that. The new LEAP file is currently being UAT'd with vendors. So hopefully any glitches will be ironed out before the submission opens. And that file will be available to submit when the 2026 end of year one opens. Finally, the LEAP file will require a new LEAP view or edit role. So that's just a reminder to basically create those roles.
Hi, this is just a reminder that in 2024 dashboard, they introduced the long-term English learner, also known as LTEL, as a new subgroup. And so in CalPADS purposes, how we identified that, we decided to do that in 2 phases. Phase 1 occurred last year, and students were identified as LTEL in CalPADS with non-certified data. So that was included in the cohort reports. In phase 2, we're going to include that in the new end of year 1 certification report. Specifically, it will include data in the 1.21 cumulative enrollment counts report, as well as the county authorization level report. We'll be adding a new LTEL indicator field, basically yes and no, similar to how we did it for the cohort reports. And then the student profile list report for end of year will also be adding that same filter and including additional columns that's similar to the fields that were added to the cumulative enrollment extract last year. And so you'll see that on the screen here. A critical piece of data used for LTEL determination is population of field 2.36. That's the student initial U.S. school enrollment date, K through 12, on the SIMP file. So that's the demographic information. And instead of going through that flash, we have a link to that flash. So please refer to flash 272 for best practices. So I'm going to pass it over to Heather.
All right, so starting this academic year, LEAs are going to be required to close out their homeless records during the end of year submission. So the intent is to improve the accuracy of homeless data by having the LEAs perform annual determination. And the way that this will be validated will take into account open homeless records that started in the 25-26 academic year versus those that started in a prior year. So SPRG 746E1, that will be a DD that will trigger just on those homeless records that start on 7/1/2025 or later. And then SPRG 747E1, I'm sorry, 746 versus 747. 747E1 is going to trigger on homeless records that started in a prior academic year that or have a start date in a prior academic year, but the student is still currently enrolled at the same LEA this academic year. So that gives the same LEA the opportunity to close out those open SPRG records. So that leaves us with open homeless records that started in a prior year and the student is no longer enrolled with that LEA or just not enrolled at all. And so for those remaining homeless records, CalPADS is going to auto close these with an end date of 6/30/2025. And we will not perform this auto close until after EOY closes this year. And so that'll allow LEAs to close the records themselves if they'd like to with a date other than 6/30/2025. Otherwise, LEAs can just allow the system to do it when end of year closes. And then moving forward, after end of year closes as well, we'll also have an input version of 747 so that any modifications or additions of historical records will be forced to have an end date for those incoming SPRG records. And that end date will need to be 6/30/2025 or prior on input. So any questions on that? It's probably a lot to absorb.
Looks like we have One question from Hyde at 1035. Does this mean that the SPRG 191 program records are not year by year, just like the 181, 182 record, now year by year?
Are now, yes, they will now be year by year, starting 25-26. So all of the prior year homeless records are still going to span multiple academic years because that was allowed in the past. But moving forward, it will be year by year.
All right, thank you, Heather. And one more from Lydia at 1036. If we want to add end date to homeless program in our SIS ahead of time, can we?
Yes. Yeah, we're not going to do auto close until after end of year closes. So that gives the LEAs time to do it themselves now.
And I missed a question from Fong. Sorry about that, Fong. So what should we do now if we have homeless program with start date of 8/1/24 and is currently open in CalPads? Do we close it out with an end date of 6/30/25 and then create a new homeless program record for 25-26, say 8/1/25 through 6/30/26? How would this affect our fall 2 certified data? Correction, just below that. I meant how would it affect fall 1 certified data?
Yes, I think you should do that. How it's going to affect fall 2 certified data, I would need to check and see if it would. It would still they'd still qualify as homeless if you submitted that second record for 25-26. But we can verify that. If you want to submit a ticket on that, just to make sure that we track it somewhere and communicate that out, go ahead and do so.
All right. And then final one from Sue-Ann. What if another district has an open 191 record?
The district that has the open 191 record is the one responsible for closing it out.
So reach out to that district. All right. Thank you, Heather. And then since we're in the Q&A portion, Rima, there was a question about the LTEL. So which definition of LTEL will be used for which report? Dashboard definition of LTEL includes English learner progress.
That one, I'm not sure. So if you want to, let me get an answer for that. Let me look into it, and then I will definitely answer that in this Q&A.
Okay, I accidentally hit the answer live button before I heard that. So the question will be under answered. Yep. Sorry about that, everyone.
Yep.
And I see Joanne's asking if there'll be a flash regarding the homeless change.
Yes,
Diana, is that okay?
Yeah, they will be. But also on that question about the LTEL and the dashboard, I mean, the definition in CalPads is what was used for the dashboard. Okay, not the other 313 definition that is used as part of assessments. There is legislation to make them aligned, but right now, the way CalPads derives LTEL is what the dashboard uses, if that was the question.
Thank you, Paula. And then just to emphasize Rima's written response, there will be an upcoming flash about the homeless program change.
And then to answer Sue-Ann's follow-up question about the 191 records. So for historical records versus historical in terms of, it depends on whether the student's enrolled this year or not. So for 746, that data discrepancy is the simplest one. It's going to trigger on the records that started this year for those students. 747 is only going to trigger for an open 191 that started in a prior year, but they're enrolled in the same LEA this year. So if there's an open 191 record that started in a prior year, but they're not enrolled at that same LEA, 747 is not going to trigger for them. And then, so a different district's not going to be responsible for closing those out. And then that's when the auto close of 6/30/2025 is going to happen for all the remaining records. Does that clear it up, Sue-Ann? And these are good questions because we can put these in the flash too to make sure everybody understands.
All right. Sue-Ann says okie dokie, which I think means yes, it was clear.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you so much, Heather. All right. The next topic of discussion is county certification reports. And I believe for this one, we're going back to Rima.
Yeah. So the county certification reports, I'm not sure if folks are aware of this, but we have a public county level report used to monitor LEA certification by submission. In previous years, it required a password login. And so this year, actually starting with fall 1, it's now publicly available. There's a link on the CDE website. In the next slide, I'll mention that one. The URL is on there. But what are these reports? They're used by county offices of education during the certification windows. It provides oversight focus, and it's not student level detail. It's just high level detail about if an LEA has approved their certification, and then also includes both SELPA and LEA level approval. And so, like I mentioned, it identifies if an LEA has certified. It also shows that if an LEA has are blocked by errors, and then also it helps the county do some follow-up before the deadline is approaching. It's publicly accessible, and so the URL is over here. On the left side image, it's the county certification UI. And right now, only fall 1 and fall 2 are available for 25-26, and for prior years, they're not available. And that's because this is more of a real-time type report that's updated, I think, every 3 hours. I'm not sure, but it is updated throughout the day as folks are approving their certifications. On the right side, you'll see an example of what the Fall 2 County Certification Report look like for a county. And also there is the ability to export this data. Since the new end of year certifications is moving away from end of year 1 through 4 to end of year 1 through 2, the county certification report layout for end of year will need to be updated. And that will now include new columns for LEA and SELPA approved columns for each submission. In prior academic years, it only included fatal errors in the overall certification status, and that was due to just the real estate of the report. So this is something that's been requested by a few county offices of education.
This does conclude the discussion of county certification reports. Seeing no questions in chat, we'll move into the next section, looking ahead to next academic year. And we've only got one slide for this one. I believe we are sending it over to Diana to discuss new course codes in the 26-27 academic year.
Yes, thanks, Matt. So we're including this information about new course codes for the 26-27 academic year as a heads up. The CDE and the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing are aware of 3 newly proposed AP courses and the standalone personal finance course, which is slated to become a grad requirement beginning in the 2030-31 academic year. So the CalPADS office has planned for these additional courses for the 26-27 academic year, and we'll share more details and information during the May regional meetings and in the forthcoming updated code set. So we're providing the update today to allow time for LEAs to plan and add any necessary placeholders to your master schedules. All right.
All right.
That one up.
Quick and easy looking ahead section today. Now moving into CalPADS support updates. So here we will discuss CalPADS differentiated assistance, CCIS initiatives in support of CalPADS differentiated assistance, and we'll provide some demonstrations from the CalPADS service desk. So first up in that list of topics is the CalPADS pathway to differentiated assistance, or the CalPADS DA was brought into being with the passage of Senate Bill 114 and is being implemented in a phased approach in the 25-26 academic year. So the current academic year, we are using final CalPADS deadlines as the criteria for inclusion in differentiated assistance through CalPADS. So any LEA that was unable to certify fall 1 or fall 2 data collections, or who will be unable to certify or who doesn't certify the end of year 1 or end of year 2 data collections by final deadlines, will become eligible for 1 year of differentiated assistance through the CalPADS pathway with the release of the California School Dashboard in October of 2026. It is being released 1 month earlier in October this year. Senate Bill 114 additionally states that LEAs who fail to certify accurate, correct, and complete data will be eligible for DA through CalPADS, and the CDE does plan to implement data quality criteria in the 26-27 academic year. CalPADS differentiated assistance requires county offices of education to provide technical assistance to eligible LEAs focused on the LEA's data management processes. This technical assistance may include a review of data management policies and collection and submission processes, including monitoring and oversight of the student information system. This assistance is intended to support LEAs in ensuring the submission of accurate data according to the processes and timelines established by the department pursuant to Education Codes Section 60900. CSIS has created resources to assist in this process, and we encourage county offices to utilize these resources within their local systems of support in providing technical assistance to LEAs that are eligible for DA based on CalPADS submissions. So that is the CalPADS pathway towards differentiated assistance. So in response to the CalPADS pathway to differentiated assistance and the first LEAs becoming eligible for DA through the CalPADS pathway, which occurred with the release of the California School Dashboard in November of 2025, CSIS has two initiatives meant to support county offices providing those DA services, as well as to support LEAs in differentiated assistance via CalPADS. And the first initiative is our Data Governance Academy, which is occurring throughout the academic year, this academic year, throughout the 25-26 academic year, with one upcoming session. We did have a session in October where we traveled to 5 regions throughout the state with watch party attendance as well. And we were able to reach about 1,200 participants in October. So pretty good reception to the session 1 there. We did have a virtual check-in session in February, where we had a panel interview with Hemet Unified School District and San Bernardino County Office of Education regarding their local practices and strategies for improvement that can be used by other LEAs and county offices. And in April, we will again be traveling to 5 regions throughout the state for our second in-person session. This one is going to be regarding operationalizing data governance with initiatives and with key documentation at scale. So what does data governance look like in very practical terms for small LEAs, for medium LEAs, and for large LEAs? And again, that session will occur in April and throughout the month of April in 5 regions throughout the state. Registration is currently available, both the URL and the QR code, and now the link that is available in the resources tab as well will point to the CSIS Data Governance Academy page with instructions on how to register for both in-person attendance and register for watch party attendance. Virtual attendance in the April sessions is limited to watch party sites, and there is no individual virtual participation in April. If folks would like to register to attend in person, they can click on the CSIS training registration to arrive at our training registration page, and we do have all of our courses of the Data Governance Academy in each region. So we'll be in the Central Valley on April 7th. We'll be in the Southern A region, which is the kind of LA region. We'll be in Riverside on April 8th. We'll be in Southern B, so San Diego, on April 10th. We'll be in Shasta on April 15th, and we will be in Sonoma on April 22nd. So you can register to attend in person on the CSIS training registration page. In order to register to attend via a watch party site, you will need to register with the watch party site themselves. And so we have included a list of our watch party sites for April, and there are instructions on how to register to attend each of those watch party sites included in the list of watch party sites in the document here. They also show watch parties that are occurring in each region. So if you would like to attend via a watch party, it will show you what is kind of available and approximate to you. So that is session 2 upcoming in April. I hope to see everyone there. The intended audience for this session is executive or cabinet level leadership, CalPADS administrators, differentiated assistant staff, and data governance professionals. So that is the CALPADS Data Governance Academy, the first initiative in support of differentiated assistance through the CALPADS pathway. The second initiative in support of differentiated assistance through the CALPADS pathway is the CALPADS Universal Supports Toolkit. The Universal Supports Toolkit is again meant to assist in county offices providing technical assistance services to LEAs in differentiated assistance, and meant to assist LEAs in differentiated assistance to determine good improvement targets. The Universal Supports Toolkit contains a data management maturity model where you're able to view the kind of landscape of performance in data management. It shows data management organizational performance at 5 levels and kind of what the characteristics of each of those levels of maturity for a data management program are. We then have our data management assessment, which will help you to determine which level your LEA assesses into and will help you to determine strengths and areas of opportunity. And you can kind of hone in on those areas of opportunity to determine improvement targets. So that's our data management assessment. Fantastic tool in determining a baseline of performance for data management at the organizational level. We then have our root cause analysis guidebook, which uses a large language model to kind of help to guide an LEA through the facilitation process to determine root causes. So you'll be iterating problem statements, executive summaries, and action plans, all while engaging with the large language model or the AI that is used in the tool. These are, again, available on our website, and you can get to the Universal Supports Toolkit via the QR code on screen. You can also get there. I've already got the website pulled up here. You can get there from our homepage by clicking CalPads in the menu at the top of the screen there, and then Universal Supports Toolkit, and there are links to download and access these resources there. So please, if you are an LEA in differentiated assistance through the CALPADS pathway, if you are a county office providing differentiated assistance remediation services, we would love to see you in the CALPADS Data Governance Academy, and please do take advantage of our tools. They are specifically designed to assist districts and county offices in these scenarios. All right, and with that out of the way, we've now discussed the CALPADS pathway to differentiated assistance and CALPADS supports. I'll go ahead and send it over to Angela to discuss support tips and resources from the service desk.
We're going to go over our new usernames and talk about report mapping guides. And okay, hopefully you can see that. So starting on March 10th through May 1st, this is what you're going to see when you log into CALPADS. On the left-hand side, you will initially log in to your legacy account to activate your new username. And after you've activated it, you will start using the right-hand side to log in. During the duration of the transition, both options will still be available even after you've given yourself a new username. Also, this is self-managed, so each individual user will be doing this. The LEA administrator doesn't have to do anything other than monitor your users to make sure that they're transitioning over to the new username. So with that, let's jump in here, and it's the typical login screen that you're used to seeing. And fingers crossed, when I was playing with this morning, this environment crashed on me, so and I had to reboot. So let's see if this works. So you'll notice we have this giant button now that says activate your new username. And before I click that, I want to point out that the account I'm logged in on has several organizations, 5 of them associated with it, varying levels of roles associated with each of those accounts. Those are going to all port over to, so again, the LEA administrator doesn't need to do anything, happens automatically. It'll just be, all of that will just be associated with my new username. So let's click that. And we get a new modal just telling us this is what you're going to do to fill out your new username, some basic information about yourself. The fun part, you get to pick your username. I don't think CDE is giving any prescribed formats for these. So LEA administrators, you want to think about your recommended for your LEA if you want to encourage folks to use, first name, first initial, last name, or you could do full first name _ last name, or period dot last name. Those are all acceptable. Keep it professional. There is values that are acceptable, and they're listed here. So if I tried to use a question mark, that's not on the list here of allowable characters. So if I tried to use that, I'm going to get a validation error. That's an invalid character. Everybody's username will end with @calpads.org. That's your new domain. That's an important piece. You'll want to remember that because you might get tripped up later, and I'll point that out once we get there. So let's activate this. Don't close out immediately because we're not done yet. There are a few additional steps that we have to follow. So step 1 is I need to log out. I need to go to the email that's associated with this account, return to that dual login page, and this time pick the right-hand side because I'm going to log in as my new username. And then I'll have a few prompts, and then I'll be able to log in. So step 1, under top right menu, your profile, you can click Log Out. And I'm going to go grab my temporary username that was just emailed to me. And now this time I'm going to sign in on my new username. And it's going to ask me for my password. And again, I put the temp password in there, and then whatever new password I want to use is the next 2 steps. And then we get the terms of service. And that's it. I have a new username and I'm logged in, and you can see the top right. My new username is Andretti@calpads.org. I still have my 5 LEAs that are associated with that account. Under ABC, I have the LEA administrator role, so that means I can edit and add new accounts. So I wanted to demo that as well for those of you that have that role. Under admin, user management, during the transition period, some of the legacy tabs will still be here, including the user list and the add new user. But going forward, as of March 10th, let's say you have a brand new employee that you want to add on March 11th, and we're going to click Add New CalPADS Account. This will create a brand new, under the new username, and you'll know that because you're designating the username here. I'm not on this this legacy one. So if you created it here, that user is going to have to transition on their own to create their own account. But if you wanted to add it under the new username, start with here. So March 11th, we have Miss Buffy Summers joins us, and I'm going to create a username for her, Vampire Slayer. But wait, CDE says we probably should use something a little more professional. So how about B Summers? And I'm not going to finish activating it, but that's all you need to do for that. The other piece I wanted to point out for the LEA admins is this new tab, New CalPADS Account List. And there is a new extract for you. It has the date that they last logged in and whether it was under their legacy account or the calpads.org account. So that'll help you as we transition over between now and May 1st. And click that, and then you go to the extract screen. I already did it this morning, so here it is. Okay. So it's a little bit hard to read, so Nate has a video that shows you all these steps, so I'm just going to quickly go through it on my own. So now we can see the date that they last logged in and how they did. Was it through the old one or the new one? So calpads.org is the new way. So that should help you manage your users as we transition over. And this tab will still remain, and so you'll still have the ability to extract this list as well. So that's not going anywhere. A lot of this was covered in Flash 319, and that is published on the CDE's website. Looking forward, there is a little bit more communication coming out on the new user name. We have an email going out this week with some of this information that I just covered, as well as a link to a video that you can share with your users on how to create your new username. At this time, the multi-factor authentication, MFA, is not enabled. That is coming later on in the process. We wanted to just roll this out first and then add the secondary security layer later. Any questions so far?
We did get some questions roll in. We have a question from Jimmy at 1056. Will county office and SELPA level need to do anything additional for authentication?
No, it's the same process.
All right. And can we or do we update our email address here as well?
No, you're going to log in with whatever your account is now, and that's going to be your new username. Your LEA admin can create a new email address for you if you need to.
Right. And then next question from Clarissa at 1059. Will we still need to update new password every 90 days under the new system and under MFA?
I don't believe that that's changing. I think we're keeping the same rules there.
All right. Next question from Corey. Does the password have requirements to be considered valid?
Rima, do you know? Or Heather?
I believe we do, but I was actually looking for what those requirements are. So I'm taking a note on that. And so we'll make sure whatever new flash, if another flash goes out, that we do have some of these answers.
I'm pretty sure it is. I was also looking to see what those password standards were.
Because we definitely have user standards that's on the screen. What's interesting is that we don't have the standards for the password, and we probably should.
Well, it's in the email. So when they click their email to finish setting up their account, it's on whatever those Microsoft pages are, I believe. I just couldn't find the screenshot for you.
Oh, we may have gotten a helpful comment in chat from Shelly. There's some listed requirements there.
Thank you, Shelley. Yes, these are from the terms and conditions, and I do think that there will be alignment, but similar to Rima and Angela and Heather want to confirm that.
Oh, Shelly was in UAT. I think this is right, Shelly. Angela, Rima, thing to add?
I see it. That looks right, Shelly. Yeah.
All right, next question. How often will we need to change our password? Every 3 months?
I think it's the same as it is now.
That's
no
not
change.
changing.
All right. Next question from Fong at 1102. How can we track users' activities, such as a submission tab, if what shows there is their user ID and they use a random username?
Well, if you're the LEA admin, you can always look up that username to see who's associated with it. But again, I think as an LEA admin, I would be issuing some guidance on how to set up their username, probably first name dot last name at calpads.org.
No vampire slayers, Fong. All right. Next, we have a question from Sandra at 1103. Is there a way for users to update their name or district passwords when there is a name change?
In your profile, your user profile, the email address is actually, for these new accounts, the email address is actually not modifiable because the system is tracking a lot of changes to the system by that email address, I think. So you can update your username and you can update your first and last name and phone number, but you cannot update your email address. So I think if you have an actual email address change, you're going to have to create a new account with a new email address.
That's correct. Yeah. So the name is under, I don't know if you saw how I got there.
Oh.
Click on your username and profile, and then you can change your name here if you need to. Their next question is, Lithea, is there a minimum or maximum character limit for the new username. I believe the max is 64 and the min is 1. Don't recommend 1, but it allows it. I tested it.
Sue-Ann had a comment in there. Diana is getting to Anna's question. Stephanie asked, when did you say the video will be available? If you're asking about the video for the new CalPADS ID, Angela, do you have a...
Yeah, we expect that to go out this week. And it'll be embedded in the email that's coming out with more information about kind of the follow-up to Flash 319.
All right. And then question from Kasha at 11:07. How do we confirm a past employee no longer has access? Kasha's newer to CalPADS. Welcome, Kasha.
Yeah, you could find the person here under new CalPADS list and edit their role. So you could delete all these here, and that will remove their access to your LEA. Did want to show you one more thing while I got your attention. It looks like we have some time. Okay, when you first sign in, when you very first get here, you're going to get this screen, and I guarantee somebody in your organization or you yourself are going to put your district email here, because just about half of people at CSIS did it. And it lets you put that in and then click next, but then you get an error. So it does have a little hint here that it's your calpads.org account. So just be mindful, if at this step you get an error, just go back and make sure you're using your new username. Also, if you forgot your new username, there's this button here, and you just put in your email address and it'll send you an email with your username. Hide, SELPA, can we provide screenshots? Matt.
The video that Nate is creating for this will include a demonstration where he's sharing his screen and going through the process. So there will be screenshots available from that video. And I believe we're planning to have the similar guidance in the Flash that will include visual.
And then Heather is answering your question, Laura. Okay, next up, I'm going to demo some resources that are available to you. And I know I've probably beaten this to a dead horse, but for those of you that are new, under help and user manual, there's so much information here, but I just want to point out some really key ones that you should be relying on. And that is the report mapping guides. And so again, I just went to help and user manual, and it's right on the landing page here. And I'm going to look at certification report mapping guides. And you'll notice we haven't consolidated end of year yet. We just finished supporting fall 2. So our analysts are shifting gear and prepping for EOY 1 right now. So these will get updated shortly. But every time we get a ticket on a report, the very first thing we do is pull up these mapping guides because there's just so much information in them. So just as an example, we're going to look at 5.1 program participations. It tells us a little bit about what's in the report and how the students were selected to be in these reports. And sometimes there's nuances. For example, on this report, if they are Title I school-wide, we include the primary, short-term, and secondary enrollments. For all the ones but the Title I, we include those. But for Title I, we only include primary enrollment status. But the key part on this is down here. So I apologize, it's probably really tiny on your screen. Each column on the report has got this red number on it. And so let's say you're working on your tribal foster youth. How did CalPADS calculate these numbers? So there's a table down below that where it corresponds to this number 6 here. So we'll scroll down and find row 6, and that means we're looking at students who have a 193 tribal foster youth record. And so really helps you troubleshoot your reports. And so, like I said, we typically have those open whenever we get a ticket on some report. Back to the user manual. We had promised to have the EOY roadmap up and ready for you prior to this meeting. Life got in the way, but we are on track to have it published this week. So very soon, Fall 1 roadmap and Fall 2 roadmap will go away and be replaced by the EOY roadmap. And if you're brand new, again, this is the place to come and get your arms around what end of year is, what files do I need to submit, where can I get more information, what order of operations should I do things. So there's embedded in every roadmap, there is a checklist. Actually, it's right under, here it is, that you can download and use locally to check things off and assign items to different people in your organization. So be on the lookout for that coming this week as well. Any more questions?
Not seeing any questions in the Q&A box, at least. Looks like the chat box is pretty well clear as well. Just to round us out here, thank you. So just kind of wrapping up the session now. This is a lot of helpful links that for you for the end of year data collections, as well as for CalPADS in general. Starting off, we have the CSIS training registration page where you're able to register for all of CSIS trainings, whether that's in person or virtual trainings. We currently have the March regionals and the April Data Governance Academy sessions up on the CSIS training registration page. But as soon as we are done with the March regionals, we will put the May regionals up on the site as well. So please do be on the lookout after tomorrow. So starting on Thursday, we will have the May regionals up on the training registration page as well. In addition to that, we have the CSIS YouTube training channel. This session will be published on the CSIS YouTube training channel. We'll also publish all of our end of year trainings for 25-26 in the first week of April. So be on the lookout for those prior to April 7th when we deliver our first live CalPADS training for end of year. We then have the user manual, and Angela showed us quite a few great uses of the user manual with the report mapping guides and the roadmaps. The user manual is quickly becoming one of the most valuable resources and pieces of documentation for CalPADS support. We have the CDE webpage for system documentation. So here you can download the CalPADS file specifications, code sets, valid code combos, and all of the CalPADS system documentation to refer to while you're performing CalPADS submissions there. And then we have our resources page. The slide deck from today's session is posted in the resources page right now. So please go download the slide deck for the March regionals. And those are the resources that we're highlighting for you in the wrap up here. These are some ways to contact us for support. So at the top, we have the web form to submit a CalPADS service desk ticket. If you would like to submit a service desk ticket to obtain support, this is the fastest way to get a hold of us and get a response and guidance with your ticket. You can also email calpads-support@cde.ca.gov or call 916-325-9210 for the support desk, though neither of these methods are as fast as filling out the web form. If you use either email or the phone, that becomes transcribed into a ticket, which adds an additional step. The web form is the fastest route to obtain support through the service desk. We also have the CSIS listserv and the CDE CalPADS listserv. These provide timely updates for CalPADS, and the CSIS listserv is also a form of two-way communication where you're able to communicate with other LEAs regionally, other LEAs using the same student information system to help to troubleshoot challenges around CalPADS. So those are our support resources. Let's go ahead and wrap it up with reminders for upcoming sessions. So the next CalPADS regional update meeting will be in May. It'll be on May 5th through the 6th. These are always going to occur on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. There will always be 4 sessions. So we'll have a morning and an afternoon session in May as well on May 5th and 6th. The focus of the May regionals will be changes for the upcoming academic year. So in May, we'll be discussing the 26-27 academic year. And again, those courses are not yet posted on the CALPADS training registration page, but we will post them on the training registration page as soon as the March regional sessions have concluded. We're just looking to avoid confusion between the March and the May regionals. So that does conclude the content of the session. We do have a slide here for any additional questions. And the only question that I'm seeing refers to a different question, which I'm not seeing. So do we have any additional questions that we need to answer from the Q&A from chat? It looks like Paula was referring to Jennifer's question at 11:12, and Dominic did provide a good answer to that. Just pausing for any last minute questions to come in before we conclude here. And it doesn't look like anything's rolling in. So on behalf of CSIS, the Education Data Management Division at the CDE, as well as the Special Education Division at the CDE, we would like to thank you for all of your hard work in CalPads. Thank you for attending the session today. Thank you to my fellow panelists for presenting with me today. And good luck for the end of year submissions.